At a so-called family meeting, my son and his wife demanded I sell my 60-acre farm, my life's legacy, to fund their lavish lifestyle. They called me selfish for wanting to keep it. I simply listened, then calmly revealed my finalized will. The look on their faces when they realized their plans were shattered? Priceless. Like and share if you've faced similar disrespect. And tell me where you're listening from. This is just the beginning of my story. The abruptness of Daniel's text had been the first red flag. Family meeting. My place. Be here by 3. No pleasantries, no hint of a topic, just a blunt command. My son, Daniel, had developed a habit of these terse summonses, always when he, or more accurately, his wife Victoria, wanted something. I knew with a certainty that settled in my bones that this meeting would not be about a pleasant family update or a shared celebration. It would be about me and what they believed was theirs, especially Victoria. She had a way of seeing the world through the lens of her own desires, convinced that anything not tied down was fair game, particularly if it belonged to someone older, someone she considered less relevant. I arrived precisely at 3, pulling my old pickup truck into Daniel's sprawling driveway. It was a well-manicured suburban landscape, a stark contrast to the wilder, more authentic beauty of my 60-acre farm. All the usual family cars were present: Daniel's sleek black sedan, Ethan's slightly older but still pristine SUV. Victoria's sporty convertible, of course, gleamed in the afternoon sun. But there was one car conspicuously missing: Lily's modest compact. My granddaughter Lily was usually the first to arrive for any family gathering, a bright spark in what often felt like a darkening room. Her absence was another brick in the wall of my growing unease. Victoria was waiting by the front door, a smile plastered on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Eleanor, right on time. We were just about to start without you." Her voice, always laced with an undercurrent of condescension, grated on my nerves. She gestured for me to follow her, not into the comfortable living room, but into Daniel's home office. My heart sank. This wasn't a family gathering, it was an interrogation. The office was set up like a makeshift tribunal. Daniel sat behind his imposing desk, looking distinctly uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Victoria and me. Ethan, my other grandson, sat beside him, nervously adjusting his tie. Victoria naturally took the chair directly opposite Daniel, leaving the guest chair, a stiff-backed wooden thing, for me. It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons to the principal's office. "Mother," Daniel said, his voice a little strained, "thanks for coming." He wouldn't meet my gaze directly, a clear sign that whatever was about to unfold was not his idea, or at least not one he fully endorsed. It was Victoria pulling the strings, as usual. I simply nodded, taking my seat, my spine as straight as the wooden backrest. Victoria wasted no time on pleasantries. Her hands clasped neatly on the desk, she leaned forward, her expression a mask of manufactured concern. "Eleanor, we've called this meeting to discuss something of utmost importance to the family's future. Your farm." My farm, the words hung in the air, thick with unspoken demands. My 60 acres, the land Arthur and I had poured our lives into, our sweat, our love, the place where we had raised Daniel, where Lily had spent her happiest childhood days, running free. "We," Victoria continued, emphasizing the collective pronoun as if she spoke for everyone, "feel it's time you considered selling it." She paused, allowing her words to sink in, her gaze fixed on me with an almost predatory intensity. "You're not getting any younger, Eleanor. Managing such a large property must be quite taxing. And quite frankly, the family has needs." "Needs?" I asked, my voice steady, though my blood was beginning to simmer. She nodded as if explaining a simple concept to a slow child. "Daniel's business could use a significant capital injection to expand. And Ethan, well, his mortgage is proving to be a strain. A considerable sum from the sale of the farm would alleviate these pressures entirely. It's for the good of the family, Eleanor." I looked at Daniel, then at Ethan. Daniel shifted, cleared his throat, but said nothing. Ethan merely stared at the desk. Neither of them met my eyes. They were complicit, or at the very least spineless. "For 40 years, I began, my voice quiet but firm, "Arthur and I worked that land. We built this life with our hands. It's not just a piece of property, Victoria, it's our legacy, and I'm perfectly capable of managing it. I always have been. Victoria waved a dismissive hand. Sentimentality. It's lovely, of course, but practicality must prevail. Think of the potential, Eleanor. Millions just sitting there. And who exactly is we? I pressed, my gaze sweeping over their faces. I noticed Lily isn't here. Was she not invited to this family tribunal? Daniel's head snapped up at the word tribunal, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. But Victoria remained unperturbed. Lily's opinions aren't relevant to this particular discussion, Eleanor. She's not directly involved in the family's financial planning. The implication hung there. Lily, my granddaughter, was not considered part of the important family, not when money was on the line. It was a fresh wound, but it also hardened my resolve. Then let me be absolutely clear, I said, leaning forward slightly, meeting Victoria's unwavering gaze. The farm is not for sale, not now, not ever. Victoria's carefully constructed composure cracked. Her smile vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. That's incredibly selfish, Eleanor. To hold on to such a valuable asset merely for sentimentality when your own family is struggling. Daniel is your son, after all. Ethan, your grandson. Selfish. The word echoed in the quiet room. After a lifetime of putting everyone else first, of sacrificing my own desires for the sake of this family, she dared to call me selfish. The insult, raw and blatant, was the final straw. It stripped away years of quiet endurance, of biting my tongue. A strange calm settled over me. They wanted to talk about legacies, about future plans? Fine. You're right, Victoria, I said, my voice eerily calm. Let's talk about the future and legacies. I reached into my handbag, pulling out a crisp, official-looking document. You see, I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and after years of careful planning and a lifetime of understanding who truly values what, I recently finalized my will. All three faces across from me watched me with a mix of curiosity and impatience. Victoria's eyes narrowed, sensing a new angle, but not yet understanding its significance. Effective upon my passing, I continued, my voice clear and deliberate. The entire 60-acre farm, its house, its barns, all its assets, will transfer directly to Lily. No trusts, no intermediaries, just Lily. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's face, already pale with discomfort, drained of all color, his mouth falling slightly open. Ethan gasped, a soft, strangled sound. But Victoria's reaction was the most dramatic. Her eyes widened, a flicker of outrage warring with stunned disbelief. Lily? She spluttered, her voice rising in pitch. Lily, but Daniel is your son. What about your living children? I met her furious gaze, a quiet sense of triumph unfurling in my chest. Lily is my living granddaughter, Victoria. She always has been. And she's the only one among you who truly loves that farm, who understands what it means, who has ever lifted a finger to help me maintain it. I stood up, feeling taller, stronger than I had in years. I think we're done here. Perhaps you should all go home and consider your actions, and perhaps what it truly means to be family. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the office, leaving them stunned in my wake. I didn't look back. The front door closed softly behind me, a gentle click that sounded to my ears like the definitive closing of a chapter. I got into my truck, started the engine, and drove home, back to my farm, back to my secured future, and to the unwavering loyalty of my beloved Lily. The drive home was a blur of dust and simmering anger. The fury that had empowered me in Daniel's office slowly gave way to a profound sadness as I pulled into my familiar farm lane. The silent farmhouse, usually a source of comfort, now felt heavy with the echoes of Victoria's sharp, cruel words. Selfish. The accusation pierced through the righteous indignation, striking at a deeper, more vulnerable part of me. Arthur, my late husband, had always been my anchor, my protector from such callousness. Now, in the quiet solitude of our home, the tears I had held back finally spilled, tracing warm paths down my weathered cheeks. I walked straight to Arthur's old study, a room I rarely entered without him. His scent, faint but enduring, still clung to the leather-bound books and wooden desk. From a hidden compartment, I retrieved his worn leather portfolio. Inside were the documents of our life, deeds, ledgers, old photographs. I traced the faded ink of the original farm deed, remembering the endless hours, the lean years, the triumphs big and small. Ours forever, Ellie, Arthur used to whisper, his hand clasped firmly in mine as we watched the sunset over our fields. He had envisioned a legacy, a haven, not a commodity to be plundered. My phone lying on the kitchen counter buzzed incessantly. Daniel, then Ethan. Call after call, message after message. I ignored them all. I wasn't ready for their weak explanations, their half-hearted apologies, or their inevitable arguments. I needed space, time to process the betrayal, to shore up the walls around my heart. Then a gentler vibration. Lily. Her name lit up the screen, a beacon in the storm. I took a deep breath, wiped my eyes, and answered. Grandma, are you okay? Dad called me. He sounded odd. He was asking really strange questions about the farm, about your plans. Her voice, always so earnest and full of concern, was a balm. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, trying to inject lightness into my tone. Just a little family discussion. Nothing to worry your pretty head about. I steered the conversation away from the contentious topic, asking about her classes, her latest gardening project at the community plot she volunteered at. We talked for 20 minutes about the tiny radish sprouts and the stubborn weeds. It was a welcome distraction, a reminder of pure, uncomplicated love. After hanging up, I found myself wandering through the old photographs in the living room. There was Daniel, a skinny boy, covered in mud, laughing as he helped Arthur with the chores. And Ethan, younger, sitting on Arthur's lap in the tractor. We had taught them to work the land, to respect its bounty. What had happened to those boys? When had the lure of easy money and Victoria's influence eclipsed the values we had instilled? Daniel especially had always been so pragmatic, so grounded. Now he seemed lost in his wife's shadow, willing to sacrifice his own mother's peace for her whims. Another text from Daniel flashed on my phone. Mom, you were unfair to Victoria. She just wants what's best for us. No mention of my feelings, no apology for their demands, just a defense of his wife, a blind allegiance that stung more than any direct insult. I didn't respond. The next morning I sought solace in routine and the physical labor that always cleared my mind. I grabbed my tools and headed to the north pasture where a section of fence had been sagging. The rhythmic hammering of fence posts, the satisfying clink of wire being stretched taut, grounded me. My thoughts, though still troubled, began to untangle. I wasn't just mending fences around my property. I was mending the boundaries of my own life. I was mid-swing when a sleek black car, entirely out of place on the dusty farm lane, pulled up. Victoria. She emerged impeccably dressed in a designer dress and heels, looking as though she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Not a farm road. The dust seemed to recoil from her expensive leather handbag. Eleanor, she called it out, her voice a little too sweet, a little too loud. Can we talk, woman to woman? I lowered my hammer, leaning it against the post. What is there to talk about, Victoria? My tone was flat, devoid of warmth. She approached cautiously, picking her way through the dry grass, wincing as a stray burr clung to her expensive fabric. Look, I wanted to apologize for how things went yesterday. I was perhaps a little blunt, and you surprised us with the will. Her apology felt hollow, a performance rather than genuine remorse. But Eleanor, Daniel's business is in real trouble. He needs a significant loan. It's for him, not just me. She looked away, her gaze sweeping over the fields. He's so stressed. I watched her carefully. Her eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, now held a flicker of desperation, quickly masked. What pressing needs, Victoria? I asked, my voice cutting through her veiled excuses. Is this really about Daniel's business, or is this about you and Daniel? Or, dare I ask, just about you? Her carefully constructed facade cracked. The manufactured concern dissolved into barely concealed anger. Well, if you must know, it's about the fact that you clearly have favorites, Eleanor. Lily, always Lily, We're your children, your direct lineage, and you're cutting us out for a mere granddaughter. My own anger, which I had carefully banked, flared. Get off my land, Victoria, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I picked up my hammer again, the steel head glinting in the sun. Now! She recoiled, her face contorted in a mix of fury and fear. You can't talk to me like that. I'm your daughter-in-law. I can and I will, I retorted, taking a step toward her. Especially when you lie to my face. I know about your gambling debts, Victoria, all of them. And I know Daniel doesn't have a clue. The color drained from her face, leaving her complexion ashen. Her mouth opened, then closed, her composure completely shattered. Her bravado evaporated, replaced by a raw, naked panic. How could you know? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Arthur's cousin, Benjamin. He works in asset management. He keeps an eye on things, for old time's sake. He mentioned a certain individual with a penchant for high-stakes card games and a rapidly accumulating tab. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. I watched her, a bitter satisfaction warring with a profound sadness that it had come to this. Just then, Daniel's car roared up the lane. He parked abruptly, rushing towards us, looking bewildered by the sudden tension. Mom? Victoria? What's going on here? I turned to him, my expression unreadable. Your wife and I, Daniel, were just having a very honest discussion about family priorities. And as it turns out, about honesty itself. I held his gaze, letting the unspoken implications hang heavy in the air between us, knowing he would eventually have to confront the truth his wife desperately wanted to keep hidden. 2 weeks crawled by, each day feeling longer than the last. The silence of the farmhouse, once comforting, now felt heavy with absence. Daniel's visits, once a weekly ritual, dwindled to nothing. Ethan, caught between his mother and his ambitious wife, tried to maintain a fragile neutrality, sending me a text now and then, but his presence was conspicuously absent. The truth was, I missed my grandchildren, even Daniel's, despite the hurt they had inflicted. Family was family, or so I had always believed. The isolation was broken one Tuesday morning by a knock on the door. It was Susan, a distant cousin from Arthur's side, a woman known for her well-meaning but incessant gossip. She bustled in, smelling faintly of lavender and judgment. Eleanor, darling, I was just in the area and thought I'd pop by. Everyone's so worried about you, you know. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too sharp. You've been so quiet lately, keeping to yourself. People are saying you're making some rather dramatic decisions. I offered her a cup of tea, my guard instantly up. Dramatic decisions, Susan, what are you referring to? She lowered her voice conspiratorially, though there was no one else in the room. Oh, you know, Victoria's been talking, saying you're acting a bit erratically, making sudden changes to your will, apparently, and, well, that you've been threatening people. She's terribly concerned, of course, for your well-being. A cold dread seeped into my bones. So this was Victoria's tactic. She wasn't just trying to bully me. She was laying the groundwork to delegitimize my decisions, to paint me as unstable, to question my mental capacity. It was a vicious, calculated move. Is that so? I asked, keeping my voice even. And what exactly am I supposed to have threatened? Susan wrung her hands. Oh, just general things. Like if they don't do what you want, you'll cut them out. You know, old age, emotions running high. She patted my hand, a gesture meant to be comforting, but felt utterly patronizing. As soon as Susan left, buzzing with new gossip to spread, I went straight to the phone. I called Brenda Hayes, my lawyer, a woman as sharp as she was kind. Brenda, it's Eleanor. I need to ask you something. Has anyone from my family been in touch with you regarding my will, or perhaps my mental state? There was a brief pause on the other end. Eleanor, I can't discuss specifics due to client confidentiality, but I can confirm I've received inquiries. There's a strong indication that they intend to challenge the will should anything happen to you. The grounds they're exploring include mental incapacity and undue influence. My suspicions were confirmed. Victoria wasn't just talking, she was acting. A few days later, Lily arrived for spring break. The sight of her old car pulling up the lane, her eager face beaming as she stepped out, was a much-needed balm for my soul. We embraced tightly, and for a moment, the dark clouds lifted. But her first words, delivered hesitantly over a cup of tea, brought them rushing back. "Grandma," she began, "Dad's been different. He's been saying you're making some really strange decisions lately, that you're not yourself." Her eyes were filled with worry. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Lily, there's something important I need to tell you. My will is finalized. The farm, everything goes to you." Her eyes widened, a mixture of shock and disbelief. "To me? Grandma, are you sure? But what about Dad?" "It was always the plan, sweetheart," I explained, my voice thick with emotion. "Not just Arthur's plan, but my father's, Thomas's. He left this farm to me with the understanding that it would stay in the hands of someone who loved it, someone who would cherish it. You're that person, Lily. You've always been the one who understood this place, who truly loved it." Lily was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the weight of my words. Then a new thought seemed to strike her. "Grandma, this is going to sound odd, but remember when Great-Grandpa Thomas died? Before his funeral, Victoria was asking you a lot of questions about his old books in that antique cabinet. She said they looked valuable and historic and that you should probably put them aside for the family before anyone else got ideas." A chill ran down my spine. The pieces clicked into place. Thomas's books, his antique cabinet, the farm itself. Victoria's interest hadn't just sprung up recently. It had been a long-term, calculated scheme. She wasn't just after the current value. She was after everything. My family history, my legacy. She wanted to erase me and replace me with her own narrative of ownership. "She's been planning this for a very long time, hasn't she?" I murmured, more to myself than to Lily. Lily nodded, her expression grim. "It certainly seems that way, Grandma. But don't worry. I'll stand by you. Whatever they try to do, I'm with you." Her unwavering loyalty was a fierce comfort, a bright spot in the growing gloom. Later that evening, Daniel called, his voice laced with anger. "Mom, what have you done? Why are you involving Lily in this? She called me. She's so upset. You're filling her head with lies about my mental state." "Lies, Daniel?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "I told her the truth about my will. As for your mental state, that's your own business. But while we're on the subject of lies, tell me, Daniel, does Victoria still have those gambling debts? Or have they mysteriously vanished with all the family's needs?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, then a click as he hung up. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with the unspoken truth. He knew, or at least he suspected. The phone lay still in my hand. The weight of their machinations, of Victoria's calculated cruelty, pressed down on me. I felt a growing sense of siege, as if my home, my sanctuary, was no longer safe. That night, for the first time since Arthur passed, I retrieved his old hunting shotgun from the cabinet above the fireplace. It was heavy in my hands, a cold comfort. I checked the safety, made sure it was unloaded, and placed it within easy reach. My farm was not just property. It was my life, and I would protect it, and Lily with everything I had. 3 months passed, slow and heavy with escalating tension. The initial shock had given way to a grim determination. My life had become a careful, calculated defense. Every text, every call, every unexpected visit was meticulously documented in a small notebook I carried everywhere. Dates, content, all recorded. My once open home felt like a fortress under siege. The isolation, though I wouldn't admit it, weighed heavily on me, a constant dull ache beneath the surface of my resolve. One crisp autumn afternoon, a familiar pickup truck rumbled up my lane. It was Richard Vance, Arthur's oldest friend and a retired elder law attorney. Richard had a way of cutting straight to the heart of matters, a sharp mind hidden behind a perpetually gentle demeanor. He sat at my kitchen table, sipping the coffee I offered, his blue eyes filled with a quiet concern. "Eleanor," he began, his voice soft, "I've heard some things, and I've been doing a little digging. Benjamin confirmed the gambling debts. Victoria's quite deep in it. We're talking $30,000, maybe $40,000. And from what I hear, it's only getting worse. The number, though not entirely surprising, still hit me. So much for Daniel's business needs. That's not all, Richard continued, his gaze steady. There's talk. Whispers in town, carried by certain family members, about you, about having you declared incapacitated. The word hung in the air, a chilling confirmation of my fears. My stomach lurched. Incapacitated, I repeated, the word tasting like ash. They truly mean to paint me as senile, don't they? Richard nodded slowly. It appears so. Eleanor, I know this is painful, but you've been too trusting, too naive about their intentions. A hot flush of shame, quickly followed by a cold wave of anger, washed over me. Naive, perhaps, but no longer. I understand, I said, my voice firm, but I won't let them. I'll fight them, Richard, with everything I have. Good, he said, a flicker of approval in his eyes. That's the spirit. Now here's what we need to do. First, we secure an independent competency evaluation. A reputable, objective physician who can attest to your sound mind. This will counteract any claims they might bring forward. Second, we need to consider putting the farm into an irrevocable trust, with you as the primary beneficiary during your lifetime, and Lily as the designated successor, trustee, and beneficiary. This would make it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for them to challenge your will or force a sale, even if they somehow manage to get a conservatorship. We spent the next hour poring over the details, discussing legal precedents, potential pitfalls. We also need to think about Lily, Richard added, his brow furrowed. If this goes to court, they'll try to drag her through it. We need to shield her as much as possible. As Richard left, a fragile hope began to rekindle within me. Having an ally, someone as sharp and principled as Richard, made the daunting task ahead feel less overwhelming. But the wariness remained, a constant companion in my heart. A few days later, I drove into town for supplies. It was a familiar ritual, but this time every glance, every hushed conversation felt directed at me. At the grocery store, the cashier averted her eyes, fumbling with my change. At the post office, two women stopped their chat abruptly as I walked by, exchanging pointed looks. The whispers were growing louder. Poor Eleanor, I overheard one woman say. Losing her mind, they say. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. This was Victoria's handiwork, poisoning the well of my reputation, slowly isolating me from the community I had called home for decades. I stopped by the church, needing a moment of quiet reflection. Reverend Miller, a kind, elderly man who had known Arthur and me for years, saw me and approached, his face etched with concern. Eleanor, my dear, it's good to see you, though I confess I've been worried. Victoria has spoken to me a few times. She says you're struggling, making some rather concerning decisions. My patience, already thin, snapped. Concerning decisions, Reverend? Or decisions that don't align with Victoria's plans for my property? I looked him straight in the eye. Reverend, are you aware that Victoria has a rather significant gambling problem? Tens of thousands of dollars in debt, by all accounts? Reverend Miller's jaw dropped. His kind, open face registered genuine shock. Gambling debts? Eleanor, are you certain? Victoria seemed so distraught about Daniel's business troubles, saying they desperately needed funds. The look on his face confirmed it. Victoria had spun a web of lies so intricate that even the Reverend had been taken in. I felt a fleeting regret for dropping such a bombshell on him, but the truth needed to be heard. Just as I was leaving the church, pulling into my driveway, Lily's car appeared behind me. She rushed out, her face pale. Grandma, I just had the weirdest call from Dad. He said you've been seeing lawyers, that you're acting paranoid and making more irrational decisions. She wrung her hands. He wants me to keep an eye on you, to let him know if you do anything odd. My anger solidified into a cold, hard core. They were trying to use Lily to turn her into their informant. It was a step too far. I remembered my father, Thomas, his quiet strength, his unwavering honesty. He had always believed in facing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Come inside, Lily, I said, my voice steady. We need to talk. All of it. Inside, I sat her down and told her everything. Victoria's gambling debts, the scheme to declare me incompetent, Richard's strategy for the competency evaluation, and the trust. I laid bare the ugliness of it all. sparing her no detail. I watched her face, seeing the shock give way to a quiet fury that mirrored my own. When I finished, Lily was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the worn wooden floor. Then she looked up, her gaze meeting mine. Her pale face was now set with a fierce determination. "They won't get away with it, Grandma," she said, her voice firm, resolute. She rose, walked around the table, and wrapped her arms around me. "Stand with me, Grandma. We'll face them together. Always. Always." Her embrace was a shield, her words a promise. The isolation I had felt for so long began to recede, replaced by the warmth of a shared fight. If you're finding this story as gripping as I am, please do me a favor. Take a moment to hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the dramatic conclusion of my journey. Your support truly means the world. The official notice arrived by registered mail, a sterile legal document demanding my presence for a competency evaluation to be conducted by Dr. Sandra Reed right here at my own home. It felt like an invasion, a deliberate violation of my sanctuary. The very idea that strangers would come into Arthur's home, into my home, to assess my mental fitness, infuriated me. I immediately called Richard, my voice tight with indignation. "Richard, they've sent a notice, a Dr. Sandra Reed, and it's scheduled to happen right here on the farm." Richard's tone sharpened instantly. "At your home? That's highly unusual, Eleanor, and deeply concerning. It gives them an unfair advantage, makes it easier to manipulate the environment." He promised to contact Brenda immediately. Within hours, Richard called back. Brenda Hayes on the line as well. Their voices were grim. "Eleanor," Brenda began, "we've done some digging. Sandra Reed is not only known for her willingness to work with certain legal firms, but she's also connected to the very firm Daniel and Victoria hired. This is a setup, plain and simple. They want a predetermined outcome." My heart pounded with a mix of fury and fear. A setup? So they're not even pretending to be fair? "No," Richard said, his voice hard. "They're not, but we're not going to let them get away with it. Brenda is filing an immediate motion to contest this evaluation, demanding it be conducted by a truly independent, court-appointed physician, not their chosen puppet. In the meantime, I've already engaged a reputable neuropsychologist for you, Eleanor, one with impeccable credentials, to conduct your own comprehensive evaluation. We'll have our own evidence ready, and I've also hired a private investigator to look into Victoria's activities, specifically her gambling habits. We need hard evidence of the scale of her debts. It was a battle and they were fighting dirty, but I had my champions. Brenda reminded me that as the named heir to the farm, Lily would eventually need to be formally involved in the legal proceedings. It was a sobering thought, but one I knew Lily would face with courage. Later that evening, Lily called, her voice laced with concern. "Grandma, you sound stressed. Is everything all right? I can come down this weekend if you need me." "Oh, sweetheart," I sighed. "It's been a bit of a whirlwind. Your father and Victoria are pushing hard, trying to question my decisions. I didn't want to burden her with the full weight of it, but she was perceptive. "I'm coming," she said, her voice firm. "And I'm bringing Chloe, my roommate. She's pre-law, smart as a whip, and she can help keep an eye on things. Maybe even take notes if you need her to." Lily's presence and the thought of her sharp-witted friend was an unexpected comfort. The next morning, Richard called again, his voice grave. "Eleanor, my private investigator just unearthed something truly disturbing. It goes beyond Victoria's debts. Daniel has been meeting with real estate developers. He's been actively exploring plans to subdivide the farm, carve it up into residential lots." The word struck me like a physical blow. Subdivide the farm. Daniel, my son, the boy who had learned to drive a tractor on this land, who had helped Arthur mend fences. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about money for them. It was about destroying the very essence of what the farm represented. The land Arthur and I had cherished, the legacy of generations, would be desecrated, turned into a soulless suburban development. My heart shattered. I walked the perimeter of the property, my boots scuffing the dry earth, trying to visualize it carved into neat little squares, devoid of its wild beauty, its history. The ancient oak, where Arthur and I had carved our initials, the rolling pasture where Lily had chased fireflies, the quiet pond that reflected the changing seasons. All of it erased. Late that night, long after the moon had risen, I heard a car door slam. Daniel. He stumbled out of his car, looking disheveled and clearly inebriated. He walked haltingly toward the porch, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Mom," he slurred, leaning heavily against a porch pillar. "The evaluation. They called it off." Victoria's furious, absolutely livid. He ran a hand through his hair, his gaze finally settling on me. "Mom, is it true what Victoria's saying about the gambling, about all the money?" I looked at my son, his face a mask of shame and confusion. The boy I had raised, now lost in a maze of deceit and desperation. "Yes, Daniel," I said, my voice steady despite the pain churning within me. "It's true, Victoria is deeply in debt. And it's that debt, not your supposed business troubles, that is truly driving all of this. It's always been about money, Daniel. Her money, and her desire to get her hands on ours." He pushed off the pillar, pacing unsteadily. "My business is struggling, Mom, and her debts, they just made everything so much worse. I didn't know how bad it was until recently. She kept it hidden, kept pushing me to get money from you." He stopped, looking at me with bloodshot eyes. "But the farm, I never wanted to sell the farm, Mom. Just a little piece to get us out of trouble." "Don't lie to me, Daniel," I said, my voice cutting through his drunken excuses. "Don't insult my intelligence. I know about the real estate developers. I know you've been planning to subdivide this land, to carve it up for houses. This wasn't about selling a little piece. This was about destroying everything Arthur and I built." He gasped, his drunken stupor momentarily replaced by stunned sobriety. How do you know about that?" His face was aghast. "Because I'm not as naive or as senile as you and Victoria seem to think, Daniel," I retorted, my voice sharp with hurt and anger. "Did you really think I would just roll over and let you take everything? Our land, our legacy, our very history?" He stared at me, his shoulders slumping. The bravado had drained out of him, leaving only a hollow shell. "I'm offering you a choice, Daniel," I said, my voice softening, trying to find the man I once knew beneath the layers of his wife's influence. "Victoria has to stop. She has to admit her problem and get help. And you need to come clean with me. A full accounting of her debts, of your business. The truth, Daniel. Only then can we even begin to talk about a path forward, about salvaging whatever is left of our family." He looked away, his gaze sweeping over the moonlit fields, the land he had been willing to carve up. He was silent for a long moment, swaying slightly. I need time to think, Mom." "Time is running out, Daniel," I warned him, my voice firm. "My lawyers are moving forward. The next step is theirs. The choice is yours." I watched him, a part of me aching for the boy he once was, another part hardened by the man he had become. I recounted Daniel's midnight visit to Richard the next morning, leaving out no detail of his drunken confession in my ultimatum. Richard listened carefully, his brow furrowed. "It's good that he's cracking, Eleanor, but be cautious. It could still be a trap. Victoria is cunning. Don't trust anything until you have tangible proof." His words, though sobering, didn't extinguish the flicker of hope Daniel's words had sparked. Later that day, Lily's familiar car, now followed by another, pulled up the lane. She burst through the door, her eyes bright, her arm linked with a young woman with a neat ponytail and an air of quiet determination. "Grandma, this is Chloe, my roommate, and we've been busy." They were armed with binders full of legal research, printouts of case precedents, and a youthful indignation that was contagious. Their energy, their fierce loyalty boosted my spirits immeasurably. I felt less like a lonely old woman and more like the matriarch of a small, formidable army. We were poring over documents in the kitchen when a familiar black SUV, Victoria's, turned into the driveway. My heart gave a little jolt, but I kept my expression neutral. "She's here," I announced. I met Victoria at the door. She looked visibly strained, her usual impeccable appearance marred by dark circles under her eyes and a tense set to her jaw. "Eleanor," she began, her voice tight, "I need to speak with you privately. There's nothing to discuss that Lily, the future owner of this farm, shouldn't hear," I said calmly, stepping aside to let her in, but gesturing towards the dining room where Lily and Chloe were now seated, their faces serious. Victoria's eyes narrowed, flickering from me to Lily, then to Chloe. This is ridiculous. I'm not discussing private family matters with an outsider and a student. Chloe is a friend of the family and Lily is very much involved, I stated, my voice firm. This is my home. You can speak here with us, or you can leave. Reluctantly, Victoria stepped inside, her designer shoes clicking angrily on my worn wooden floor. She turned her fury on me. I don't know what lies you've been spreading to Daniel, but I am not a gambler, Eleanor. These accusations are baseless and disgusting. Just then a voice calm and clear drifted from the dining room. It was Lily. We have detailed records, Victoria. Casino statements, credit card transactions, thousands of dollars. It's all here, in black and white. She held up a binder, its pages rustling softly. Victoria's composure shattered. The color drained from her face, leaving it pasty. Her eyes darted wildly, from me to Lily, then to the closed door. The bravado evaporated, replaced by a raw, trembling fear. What? What do you want? She stammered, her voice barely a whisper, implying blackmail. Money? Is that it? You just want to twist the knife, don't you? I want peace, Victoria, I said, my voice quiet, unwavering. I want to be left alone on my own land. I want you to stop trying to steal what isn't yours, and I want you to get help. Her face contorted in a sneer. You want peace, you selfish old hag? You can rot here alone. See how much peace you have when Daniel leaves you for good. She lunged towards the door, her fury a tangible thing. He'll realize what a terrible mother you are, and he'll never speak to you again. Daniel might see things differently once he knows the whole truth, Victoria, I retorted calmly, my voice following her as she stormed out. Once he realizes exactly how much you've cost him, and how much you've cost all of us. The screen door slammed shut, rattling in its frame. Victoria's SUV peeled out of the driveway, spitting gravel. Lily rushed to my side, wrapping an arm around me. Grandma, are you all right? I found myself surprisingly calm. The confrontation, though ugly, felt like a release. The tension had finally broken, and the truth, harsh as it was out in the open. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, patting her hand. More than fine. The next morning, the calm was still with me. The sun shone bright, painting the stripes across my kitchen floor. Then I saw Daniel's car. He pulled up slowly, parked, and got out, looking utterly haggard. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, his face pale and drawn. He looked as though he hadn't slept in days. He walked to the door, not with his usual swagger, but with the hesitant steps of a defeated man. I opened the door for him. He offered a weak smile. Mom. Daniel, I replied, my voice gentle. I led him to the kitchen table and poured him a cup of coffee. He took a long sip, staring into the depths of the mug. I found them, Mom, he finally confessed, his voice hoarse. Victoria's casino statements, stashed away in an old shoebox, nearly $40,000. She gambled it all away, and more, from our joint accounts. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. God, Mom, Arthur would be so disappointed in me, in both of us. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. Arthur believed in second chances, Daniel. He believed in doing the right thing even when it's hard. And he certainly would be disappointed, but more in the choices, not in you as a person. It's not too late to make things right. He looked up, his eyes filled with shame and regret. I canceled the competency evaluation, Mom, and I told the developers the farm is not for sale. Not now, not ever. A wave of relief washed over me. This was the Daniel I knew, the one Arthur had raised. And Victoria? I asked softly. He sighed, a deep, shuddering breath. I confronted her. Everything came out. The debts, the lies. She finally broke down. She's been seeing a therapist for a while now, secretly. She has a preliminary diagnosis of gambling, addiction, and bipolar disorder. Apparently, the gambling is a symptom of the underlying condition, an attempt to self-medicate or chase highs. He paused, looking directly at me. I enabled her, Mom. I ignored the signs. I let her manipulate me. I just wanted to avoid the arguments. And now, I asked? She's agreed to a 30-day inpatient treatment program, he said, a flicker of hope in his tired eyes. She started this morning. I'm staying with Ethan for a while. I don't know what comes next, Mom, for any of us. A genuine smile finally touched my lips. Daniel, I am so glad to hear that. For Victoria, for you, it's a brave step. I squeezed his hand again. One day at a time, son. That's all we can do. One day at a time. The sun was warm on our faces as Lily and I walked the perimeter of the farm, her hand in mine. I pointed out the ancient oak where Arthur and I had carved our initials decades ago, the winding creek that fed the lower pastures, and the highest ridge where we often watched the sunset. With each step, I felt the land breathe beneath my feet, its history echoing in the rustle of leaves and the distant lowing of cattle. This land, Lily, I said, my voice soft with reverence. It's more than just property. It's generations of our family. And someday, it will be yours. With it comes not just your boy, but responsibility to cherish it, to protect it, just as Arthur and I did, and as my father Thomas did before us. Lily squeezed my hand. I understand, Grandma. I promise I'll uphold the legacy. I'll honor you, Grandpa Arthur, and Great-Grandpa Thomas. This farm will always be a place of sanctuary, just as it's always been. Her genuine devotion warmed me to my core. The months that followed brought a period of quiet healing, and to my surprise, a degree of reconciliation. It wasn't without its setbacks, of course. Victoria completed her 30-day inpatient treatment, and to her credit, continued attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. However, the damage to her marriage was too deep. Her marriage to Daniel eventually ended, and she chose to move to Florida to start fresh, away from the temptations and the painful reminders of her past mistakes. Daniel and I slowly, painstakingly began to rebuild our relationship. It was a fragile thing requiring clear boundaries and honest communication, but it was there. He came to the farm more often, not with demands, but with genuine offers of help. Ethan, perhaps relieved by the lifting of tension, resumed his regular visits with his children, and they would eagerly pitch in with farm work, rekindling the connection to the land that had almost been lost. Richard, my steadfast ally, remained a close and supportive friend, his quiet strength a constant comfort. And Lily, true to her word, spent every school break at the farm, learning its history, its rhythms, and the practical skills needed to care for it. One year after that fateful family meeting, I decided to host a harvest dinner on the wide, sprawling porch. The air was crisp, scented with wood smoke and ripening apples. The long wooden table was laden with food, much of it from the farm's own bounty. Richard and Brenda, my legal champions, were there, their faces relaxed in the warm glow of the lanterns. Lily, radiant, sat beside her sharp-witted roommate, Chloe. Ethan was there with his children, their laughter mingling with the evening breeze. Even Susan, our gossip-prone cousin, had returned to the fold, her concern now genuine, her whispers replaced by warm conversation. Then Daniel arrived, alone. He walked up the path, and I saw a man who looked lighter, the heavy weight of Victoria's debt and his own complicity finally lifted from his shoulders. He was more like the son I remembered, his smile less forced, his eyes clearer. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the fields in hues of orange and purple, I raised my glass. To this land, I began, my voice clear and strong, to those who are gone but never forgotten, who poured their lives into this soil. I glanced at Lily, then at Daniel, and to the future, which is bright as long as we remember what truly matters, family, honesty, and the earth beneath our feet. A chorus of voices echoed, to the land. Later, as the last guest departed and the stars began to pepper the inky sky, Lily joined me on the porch swing. We swayed gently, the quiet creak of the chains a soothing rhythm. You saved the farm, Grandma, she murmured, leaning her head on my shoulder. I smiled, pulling her closer. We saved it together, sweetheart. And more importantly, we saved our family, or at least we began to. We found our way back to what truly matters. I remembered Arthur's words, whispered to me so many years ago. This land isn't just soil and trees and crops, Lily. It's our past and our future all in one place. Lily looked out at the moonlit fields, her gaze filled with understanding. I won't let it be broken, Grandma. I promise, Mom. I squeezed her hand. I know you won't, my dear. I trust you implicitly. I woke before dawn, as was my habit, but this morning there was a lightness in my step. I walked to my favorite spot on the ridge, the air cool and crisp, waiting for the sunrise. I reflected on the battles fought, the family mending, the future generations who would learn to love this land as I did. The struggles, the betrayals, the pain, they were all part of the story now, etched into the history of the farm. But so too were the resilience, the love, and the unwavering spirit of those who truly cared. As the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, painting the sky with brilliant colors, I felt Arthur's presence beside me, strong and comforting. I could almost hear his voice, clear as a bell in the morning air. We did it, Mel. We kept our promise. This land is ours forever. I whispered the word back to the rising sun, forever. And as the new day dawned over my ancestral land, I found a complete, profound peace.